There is a very famous word, and I've said it a number of times, and it bedavka does not apply this year, just to give you a contrast. It's often pointed out that we're about to enter the month of Cheshvan in a few days, and Cheshvan is the only month of the year in which there's not a Yom Tov, or at least you're not looking forward to a Yom Tov like Elul. It's called Mar Cheshvan, according to that, the bitter month of Cheshvan. And the Svarim tell us that bedavka, after a month full of Kedusha, days of Tshuva, days of Tefillah, days of Simcha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to test us, give us a test, whether we can take the inspiration of the special times of the year and bring it into ordinary time. Cheshvan is the paradigm of ordinary time, nothing special. Because the real test of a Yom Tov is not, am I inspired in the Yom Tov, but do I take it with me in the ordinary life? So bedavka, it's been pointed out that Cheshvan is the litmus test if we have grown from the Yomim Tovim. The Chazon Ish, other people also say the same mashal, gave the mashal of a pot that boils over. When I see a pot that's on the fire that bubbles over, I don't know if it's half empty or totally full, because even a half empty pot will bubble over when it's on the fire. But I only know how full it is when it's off the fire and it's no longer hot. If it still overflows, then I know how much teichen is in the pot. And the Chazon Ish says, the fact that I'm inspired during a Yom Tov, that doesn't mean anything. Everyone gets inspired to a greater or lesser degree. But Cheshvan is the ultimate litmus test. This is a well-known machshava, that you're going from special times to ordinary times, although Aliba D'Emes, nothing is ordinary. In the year Tafshin Pei Dalet, 5784, we didn't go from Yom Tov to ordinary times. Lehepech, it's exactly the opposite. We face extraordinary challenges. Challenges that indeed might be the greatest challenge that Israel, as a state at least, has faced since 1948. A chorban that creates tremendous pachad, tremendous anxiety, fear. So Hashem is giving us a nisayon of a different type of nisayon. It's not the nisayon, can we be inspired when life is ordinary and normal and nothing special seems to be happening? But lehepech, can we have emunah and bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Precisely when things are so dangerous, so scary, so frightening. You know, Suka is called Tzila D'Hamnusa, the shadow of emunah, because what is Sukkah all about? You put yourself in a vulnerable environment where you're open to the sky and to the rain and to the elements. The Hirsch points out that Gog and Magog, the great enemies that will come before Mashiach, comes from the word Gog. Gog is a roof, permanence. I don't need God. I'm self-contained. I'm protected. Sukkah is Malchus Beis David. Harachaman hu yakim lanu as Sukas David hanefalas, the fallen Sukkah of David. It's a pasuk in Amos actually. Sukas David hanefalas. Malchus Beis David, Geula, Mashiach, knows that without HaKadosh Baruch Hu there's nothing. Without HaKadosh Baruch Hu we can't accomplish anything. So the Moso are the Gog who thinks they can do it alone. We have to be Bechinas Sukkah. So we observed it. The Nisayon HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us now is not the Nisayon of transition to the ordinary, which might be the normal Nisayon of Cheshvan. But it's the Nisayon, have we learned the idea of Sukkah? Have we learned to have emunah and bitachon even when times are difficult? Even when there's a pachad, even when things, when Harav and people are dying, there are korbanos. In a sense, this is the true Sukkah. Can you have emunah bitachon? Now, there's a story with the Brisker Rav, that the Brisker Rav was in the Warsaw Ghetto. And the Brisker Rav, we know, because of his Yiras Shamayim, the Brisker Rav was often very nervous about mitzvahs. Did he do a mitzvah properly? Did he not do a mitzvah properly? He would have many, many sveikas. In the Warsaw Ghetto, where people were dying left and right, starvation, sickness, murder, the Brisker Rav was unusually calm. He had a certain menuchas hanefesh. In the Warsaw Ghetto, he was giving shiurim, things were going as much as you could do, Keseder. So someone had chutzpah, it's kind of a little bit of a risky question. They asked the Brisker, said, the Rebbe is always kind of Meira and Pachad. How could it be that in the Warsaw Ghetto, where there's plenty of reason to be worried about everything, you have a menuchas hanefesh? And he answered, I am worried when things are in my hands. Whether I do a mitzvah properly or not properly is up to me. Hakol b'dei Shemayim, chutz b'yirei Shemayim. When I'm in charge, I'm scared. When I'm in charge, I could mess up, I could make mistakes. But what happens when you're in a matzav where there's very little you can do? Very little you can do. You can't change it one way or the other that much by yourself. So some people might go crazy. Some people might be so anxious, they might, God forbid, commit suicide. Vizgrov says for carrots. That is when I have menuchas hanefesh, because I know I'm totally in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it doesn't mean, in the Pollyannish sense, everything will have the happy ending that we want. I mean, Vizgrov lost his Rebbetzin and a lot of his mishpacha in the Holocaust. He understood the notion of tragedy very well. But the idea is that on a deeper level, HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, even the difficulties, I can accept with emunah, with equanimity, being batuach that on some level Hashem loves Am Yisrael no matter what. And even though there are so many things we don't understand in this world, but I know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge. And that is one of the nisyanis that these experiences call upon us to have real emunah. In fact, in another context, the Brisker Rav remarked, it's easy to have emunah when you have $100,000 in the bank. Of course, that was before inflation. Now you'd have to have a higher amount of money. He says, it's easy to be a maimin when you have money in the bank. But real emunah is when your bank account is depleted, and chas v'shalom, when things can even be more difficult, as they are right now. So a lot of our nisayon right now is to be mechazek in emunah, bitachon, to understand the mystery of Gamzu L'Taiva, which even Moshe Rabbeinu was not able to fully understand, and we can certainly not understand it. But to understand that this is a process towards the Bias of Geula. And indeed, without getting into an area in which I can hardly claim to be an expert, we know that Sukkah Bichlal is the Tekufa of Gaig u'Magaig. The Haftarah of the first day of Sukkot talks about milchamais against Eretz Yisrael, and how eventually out of that chayshach will come an or and come a geula. Chazal talk about chavlei Mashiach, the birth pains of Mashiach, just like birth requires suffering and pain. And then there's the beautiful new life that comes into the world. Geulasan shel Yisrael will come out of these struggles. And the Maral points out that there are really two metaphors that are used to describe Geula. One is birth, chavlei leda, chavlei, birth pains of Mashiach. The other is semicha, the growth of a seed, a plant that comes out of a seed. Semach David, the plant of David, the growth of David. And the Maral points out that that is also a very, very beautiful and powerful mashal. Because when you plant a seed in the ground, the seed has to totally disintegrate before it grows. So too, Geula cannot come when we're filled with our gaiva, we're filled with our arrogance. We think we're in charge. You know, one of the amazing things that people wonder about, and indeed the Israeli government wonders about it, we have, Baruch Hashem, one of the best, maybe the best intelligence service in the whole world. Right? Israel knows everything. And this was a total surprise. They don't even understand. How is it shaykh that the army and the Shin Bet and the police had no havamina, God, for that such a tragedy was going to happen? It's a good kasha. But the Eibishter sometimes wants us to realize that koichi v'yaitsim yadi doesn't work. That without HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're lost, we're bereft. And this too is a siman of Geula, the Maral says. When we're mevatel, the egotism that we sometimes have and the gaiva, then we're open to receive the Yeshuas Hashem. So we hope, and again I mentioned Hoshana Rabbah, I don't want to repeat the drasha, that Rabbeinu Bechaya says that Nisa Chamayim, Banu B'Yeshu V'Mayim, David HaMelech says we've gone through fire and water, so state in the Zayar, fire is the Kayach of Esav. And water is the kayach of Yishmael. And we go through Esav and we go through Yishmael. And Rabbeinu Bechaya says the Nisa Chayayin, which is red, resembles fire. That's the Mapala of Esav coming back to Hashem. And the Nisa Chamayim of Sukkot is Bedafka, the Mapala of Yishmael coming back to Hashem. Through Tshuva, even through Tshuva. And therefore Sukkot too is a celebration of Yishmael eventually doing Tshuva, abandoning his evil ways, coming back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So again, as the Rambam writes, it's not biyodenu to kind of define Chavlei Mashiach, Ikvasa de Mashiach, all of these inyanim. But again, just lefi pashtus, something's going on. We're approaching Geula. That should give us chizuk, that should give us strength. But it's a shver tekufa. It's a difficult tekufa. Baruch Hashem, and it should continue, Baruch Hashem in our part of the country. Chasdei Hashem. So far, we're okay, and may it truly continue. But that cannot obscure the fact. Just a few miles down the road, whatever it is, 50 miles, whatever it is, 100 kilometers, there is massive, and there has been, massive suffering. People dying, people being massacred in brutal ways. Men, women, and children taken hostage, taken captives. And they're going to be used, lo aleinu, they're going to be used as human shields. So if we try to defeat this enemy, then chas v'shalom, their lives are going to be in danger. Baruch Hashem, Hashem has shown us great rachamim here. But we cannot forget under any circumstances what is going down the road. The Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva, when he lists the different averos that are so serious that a person could lose his sherda and olam haba legamri unless they do tshuva. So the Rambam lists a lot of very, very serious things. But then, towards the end of the list, he comes up with something that, we might not necessarily take so serious. The Rambam has a category called Poresh Midarchei Hatzibor. Says the Rambam, what is Poresh Midarchei Hatzibor? A person who's from, a person who does mitzvahs, a person who learns Torah. But he doesn't feel the pain of what other Jews are going through. He's not mishtatef in their tsar. He's not mishtatef in their simcha. It's kind of what happens to them is what happens to them. It's not nogei ami. Says the Rambam, even if he has Torah, u'maisam tovim. Ein lo chelek le'olam haba. Because he's not mishtatef in the suffering of Klal Yisrael. So one of our avodah, once again, is to be mishtatef in that suffering, to feel that pain, to spend maybe a little bit of time imagining what it would be like, chas v'shalom, if we would go through it. Now again, I want to be careful because there is another nekuda in which, even during this time, we have to have not only avodas Hashem, but we have to have avodas Hashem b'simcha. The purpose of this is not to be depressed. It is not to be sad. It is not to be tzebrachin. Because that's the atzas yetzer hara, to make a person be miyayish. We have to serve Hashem with simcha and islavos and know that that is a key and that is a mavteach that brings a shefa of bracha from Shemayim. But at the same time, spend a little bit of our time trying to be nosei ol, to carry the yoke, to share the yoke, share the pain. Mishtatef b'tzar, to be peiresh, not to be peiresh. Midarchei hatzibur. Because chas v'shalom, if we say that Baruch Hashem, we're safe here, and again, I pray and hope that we will be safe. There's no guarantees anywhere anyway. But even if we knew we were safe here, so what? Yidden are suffering, shrekliche suffering. Families have lost children. We have to feel that pain. We have to be margish. We have to be noisei bi'ayol es chaverei. And that's one of our achrayas. By extension, therefore, This is a time in which we have to grow in our Avas Yisrael, in our Achdus. It's no accident, and I don't want to get into politics. But you may recall that the last big story in Eretz Yisrael before this was over a year. I don't know how long it was. A whole big mevucha about judicial reform, secular against religious, religious against secular, and then there was the army. There's always something. And, we fight, and of course, again, there are issues. There are issues that, need to be discussed, need to be debated, need to be, vigorously fought out in a proper way. But far too often, on both sides of the equation, it turns into demonization, to bittul, to people being Rishoyim, Amolekim. Anyone to the right of me is a fanatic. Anyone firmer than me is a fanatic. Anybody to the left of me is an apikairis. The Nitziv writes in the Hakdama to Hamik Dover, and the Nitziv was criticized for it in his own door. But the Nitziv says that the sinas chinam of the Bayis Sheni, the sinas chinam that was Gairim, the Churban Bayis Sheni, was the notion of different people looking at other people and saying, you're treif and you're puzzle and you're no good and you're invalid. And I think one of the things that this makes us realize almost is how stupid it was, how worthless it was, how unimportant it was. Does Hamas care if somebody wears a black yarmulke or a kippah sruga or no kippah at all? Did it make a difference? And then we have to realize, the Sfas Emes says in the famous passage in the Haggadah, V'hi she'amdo laveseinu v'lanu, she'le'achad bilvad amad aleinu l'chaliseinu. That which has kept us alive, it is not only one that has tried to destroy us. The Sfas Emes reads the taich a little differently. She'le'achad bilvad. It is the fact that we weren't one. Amad aleinu l'chaliseinu. State in Medrash, in the generation of David HaMelech, the Chayalim were tzaddikim. And yet there were a number of very, very serious defeats in David HaMelech's army. And yet in the time of Achav, Melech Yisrael, who was an Oived Avodah Zarah Mamish, a great Rasha, and many, many of his people and followers were Ovdei Avodah Zarah. But Achav was Zeicha to many, many military victories. And the Medrash says, Hayitachin, that Achav was more successful in Milchama than David HaMelech. How is it shaykh? And it says that in David HaMelech there was Diltairim, Balei Lashon Hara, people who were Mavatel other people, people who were putting other people down. And that took away the Zechus of an Achdus and an Avas Yisrael. And Achav, Hagam, that they were Rishayim. But for whatever the reason, whatever the dynamic was, there were no Diltairim. It's a Medrash. There were no Balei Lashon Hara. There was no idea of putting people down. So this is something we have to absorb. We live in a highly, highly polarized society, a society of machlekes, and there are reasons for it. I don't want to get into it. There are reasons for it. I'm not saying it's totally illegitimate. But at some point, it goes beyond the gevul. And then we need reminders that we have to be together. We have to have an achdus. We have to have an avas Yisrael. Now, Shlomo HaMelech says in Mishlei, Kamayim hapanim el panim, kain leiv ha'adam li'adam. As water reflects the face that you show the water, so the heart of a person reflects that which you show it. Says the Gra, if I look at a reflecting pool of water, whatever face I show the water is the face I'm going to see in the water. I smile at the water, I see a smiling face. I frown at the water, I see a frowning face. So the pasuk says, the way that water reflects what you show it, so too the heart of a human being shows back what you show it. I show a person kavod, I show a person derech eretz, I show a person appreciation. They are going to appreciate me. They're going to be machshav me. I show them denigration and bittul. That's what they'll feel about me. So, again, I don't want to go into prate pratim. We live in a world, chiloni, we live in a world where the cause of the Torah is often mavuzah. Litzarenu. So we fight back. Something very precious is being attacked. We fight back. But we have to think sometimes. Is that going to make things better or make things worse? Kamayim apanim lapanim. If we could have hakara satayv to chayalim. And again, I am far from the first person who said this. People much, much, much greater than me, going back to Rav Chaim Shmulevitz and probably earlier, made this point. Hakara satayv to people that are meiser nefesh for Am Yisrael, for Eretz Yisrael. Hakara satayv to the infrastructure that allows a Torah community to flourish and grow. Then maybe, just maybe, those who may not always see the greatness of Torah, based on mayim apanim, might see what Torah does as well, and how important Torah and Ruchnius is to the Kiyum of Am Yisrael. So, Pirish midarchei hatzibur, we have to be nice b'yalim chaverei. Achdus avas Yisrael, hakaras hatayv, strengthening ourselves in emunah and bitachon, even in difficult times. Realizing, as individuals and as a society, kaichi v'yaitziv yadi isn't going to work. Without HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all the systems that we create are batel u'mavutel. And they can be defeated by people who are basically very, very primitive anyway. And yet they could defeat like the greatest army and intelligence that exists in the whole world. It's interesting that it's brought down that when the Torah describes Moshe Rabbeinu at the very end of the Torah, the last picture, the last thing it says about Moshe is, there was no one like Moshe for all of his yad chazaka, his mighty hand, asher asa liYisrael. Says Rashi from Chazal, what is the yad hachazaka? The shviras haluchais, that he broke the luchais. It's a strange thing. This is the last picture we're going to have of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu did so many things. Yitzias Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf, Matan Torah. In his zechus, he brought the man to Am Yisrael for 40 years. He was mispalel on them that they shouldn't be destroyed so many times. So the most important thing that you got to remember about Moshe Rabbeinu is he broke the luchais. And the answer is, yeah. Shviras haluchais was an awful thing. It was a tragedy. But through that tragedy, we were brought to tshuva, we were brought to aliyah, we were brought to transformation, we were brought to the pinnacle of Yom Kippurim, and the Gilui Shechina of Sukkot, the return of the Ananei HaKavod. That sometimes that the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu works is that through Shavira, there can be the greatest tikkunim, the greatest aliyah through the Shavira. Otherwise, we take things for granted. Otherwise, we don't change. Otherwise, we don't grow. But what a tragedy it is if we go through tsaras and we don't change. Then the tsaras are indeed levatala. Then they're worthless, and then they're tragic, and then they're meaningless, and then they're pointless. But that's not a taina on Hashem. Hashem gave us matzavim where we can respond in a certain way. If we don't respond in a certain way, we're the shaitan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us these opportunities. The opportunity of Shviras Haluchais. Let me just mention the obvious points. We're obviously beginning these man early. And I appreciate that this is difficult for people. I understand people say, oh, it's only 2 days early, whatever it is. I understand. Beinas Manim, I understand that some people even were planning to have a siyumim that they would be able to do. And even the people who just need rest and relaxation, the Ben Torah needs a certain amount of menucha as well. So it is a hardship. The yeshiva does not, ignore the fact that this is a little hard. But I think there are 2 points to keep in mind. I don't want to be sarcastic. It's not a time to be sarcastic. But if it's a little inconvenient for us to come early, I think the men, women, and children who are being held in underground tunnels by Hamas are also suffering a little bit of inconvenience. And maybe part of our Mesiras Nefesh would be to do something that's a little difficult for us. Part of that is no say biol. But more importantly than that, and again I apologize for being a little sarcastic, but more important than that is the zechus of Talmud Torah itself. You have to realize, I know in America people are saying, what can I do? What can I do? People are being murdered. What can I do for Eretz Yisrael? And even we can ask, what can I do? I'm not going to be a fighter. But the answer is, it's very simple. What you can do. You daven. You learn. You do mitzvahs. You see, we think, and I say all of us, we have this thing, well, that's not doing anything. Doing something is only if you're down there or whatever it is. I include myself, sometimes at least on an emotional level, intellectually we know. On an emotional level, we're not always margish the chashivas of what we're doing. Yeah, you have to know, again, this is pashut, I'm not telling you any chidushim here. When you sit and learn, it's not simply a matter, I've done a good thing, so God's going to give me a good report card, so I'm going to get olam haba. You don't understand, it's not just that. It's nefesh chaim, shardal. You bring bracha to the world. You bring shefa to the world. We don't even realize this. An extra hour of learning might, we can't trace it because we don't have all of the cheshbainas of Shemayim. But, you might save a child's life because of what you're doing. It's hard for us because we don't see the direct cause and effect. But it vadai exists. So, to come in a little early, to start learning, and then learning b'simcha and with hislavas, you have to understand how much you're helping, not just yourself, and of course you're helping yourself. You're helping Am Yisrael. You're helping Klal Yisrael. You have no idea what it might mean. And you magnify, we have our yeshiva and, all the, so many other yeshivas, starting early. Collectively, there may be hundreds, thousands of hours that are learning, and of course, even after this man, there'll continue to be zechusim, but this extra that otherwise wouldn't have been here. An extra thing that we're doing for Hatzalah of Klal Yisrael. How much it counts. How much it means something. And the fact that it does cause a certain amount of tsar for us, a certain amount of difficulty. Again, l'fum tsara adra, that gufa magnifies the chashivas of the learning of that Torah. So, I don't know if the yeshiva owes anybody an apology, but we do understand we're also no say biol, even on these inyanim as well. But it should be a comfort to you that you're helping Klal Yisrael by making this relatively small sacrifice. And Be'ezras Hashem, may the gates of Shemayim, may gates of Rachamim be open. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring a Geula v'Yeshua li'am Yisrael. May all of those who are captured come home with their families in a wholeness of both the body and the spirit. May the Chayalim be safe, and may this be part of the Chavlei Mashiach that will bring us to a Geula Shleima b'mheira v'yameinu.